Naeem Suleimanoglu, the best weightlifter ever, snatched 142.5 kilos, basically equal to Matt Fraser's best ever snatch of 143 kilos. But he did it weighing less than 60 kilos in body weight, 45% less than Matt. And he did it as a teenager. Now, this is a ridiculous comparison, but it is engaging enough to hopefully keep you all listening for the next few minutes. This type of comparison also shows you how much you can make stats look more impressive than they really are in reality, because you can also say that Matt Fraser has outsnatched Naeem's best snatch as a teenager by half a kilo. Both are true, neither are helpful. You can also say that Matt Fraser has progressed about 30% as much from his baseline as a better comparison athlete in terms of body weight, like Andrei Rybakov. But from that same token, he has somehow snatched only 23.5% less than him. These kinds of statistics being thrown around need much more context. So let's contextualize them. So the actual reason that I wanted to make this video is because a page called WOD Science on Instagram made this post that you can see here about CrossFitters only being 19.3% worse at weightlifting than weightlifters, and B, because I actually really like both sports. I'm a weightlifter, I run a weightlifting company, I train and coach in weightlifting, but I came up through CrossFit and I do recognize it as an incredibly impressive sport. But what I'm going to do is explain why this supposed 19.3% difference is probably more like the best weightlifters being around 60 to 70% better at weightlifting. Now, last and final disclosure to save myself from all of the potential hate that's coming my way, a mandatory acknowledgement that if elite CrossFitters moved to weightlifting, they would show up on national podiums within a few years all around the world. Me saying that these CrossFitters aren't perhaps as good as some people think they are at weightlifting really isn't a dig. In fact, just the fact that they are as good as they are while also competing in a ton of other events is amazing, and credit to them as athletes. But if you still have some anger about this, please do leave it in the comments down below so that the YouTube algorithm can help boost this video. Also, send it to your friends who might also get angry about this comparison, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can get angry at future videos that we do. All right, let's get into it. The male CrossFit athletes lifting 19.3% less means that they would have to increase their lifts by 25% to match the weightlifters. The women would need to increase their lifts by 18%. Put like this, the difference in performance seems a little bit greater. But even stated like this, percentage differences in weight are a very misleading way to portray the differences in performance between athletes at the top of any sport. Anyone who follows sport or competes in sport knows that as the limits of human physiology are approached, the talent and work required to improve becomes greater and greater. It's not linear. Each additional kilo is harder to gain. A novice can easily improve by 10% in a year, whereas increasing a world record by even a kilo can require multiple years worth of training. Unless, of course, you're Lasha or Li Wenwen, it's slightly different for them. Now, for example, I snatch 116 kilos. That's 25% more than someone who snatches 93 kilos. Thank you to everyone who sent in their 93 kilo snatches. Now, that's not a huge difference really, because we're both mediocre lifters where progress shouldn't be too hard to come by. My friend Zach Tellender, he snatches 25% more than me at 145 kilos. Now that's a more impressive leap. And it gradually becomes more and more impressive as you add that 25%. The guy who snatches 93 kilos can move to 100 kilos within the year. I'm already at that point where taking me from 116 to 120 is proving to take several years to do, and Zach at 145 has already recognized that he can't beat this number and has therefore basically given up trying to do that. If we add 25% to Zach's 145 kilo lift, we get to 181 kilos, which is 1 kilo more than Xiaojun snatched in training, weighing 30 kilos less. Okay, so let's get back to the CrossFit comparison. Oh, and very quickly, for those of you who are new to this channel or perhaps just want to learn more about becoming a better weightlifter, we actually have a one-day seminar, athletes only, September 25th, where you can learn from Olympic champions, Olympic medalists, scientists, coaches, researchers, all there to help you improve your performance. I'll put a link to that down below. So WOD Science on Instagram, who, by the way, I'm not hating on WOD Science. I used to love doing these types of, fake studies where you just take an n=3 type situation and try and draw some major conclusion. But they chose to compare the male CrossFit athletes to the 81 kilo category in weightlifting and the women to the 64 kilo category. Now, most of the CrossFit athletes will actually weigh a decent amount more than these athletes and will not have had to have made a 2-hour weigh-in before the competition. In fact, really, I'm not totally sure why we would compare CrossFitters to a single weight category at all, given that CrossFit is not a weight category sport, but there we go. The best snatch from a male CrossFit Games athlete at this year's CrossFit Games, which is what WOD Science chose to do, was a 305 pound or 138 kilo snatch by Guilherme Malheiros, who, by the way, Malheiros, has a wonderful looking lift, like a really good lifter. The champion of the lightest Olympic category, 61 kilos, snatched 141 kilos, that's Lee Far Bin. So that's already a heavier lift. In the 67 kilo category, 7 athletes managed to lift more than 138 kilos, all weighing less than 75% of Malheiros' weight. On the women's side, this comparison is much the same. The best CrossFit Games snatch was 200 pounds or 91 kilos, made by Tia-Clair Toomey, fantastic CrossFitter and weightlifter, and also Annie Thorisdottir. The Olympic champion of the lightest weight category on the women's side, the 49 kilo category, hit a 94 kilo snatch, which is somewhere around 207 pounds. 755 kilo lifters hit 90 kilos or above also, and since most elite male CrossFit athletes weigh more than 81 kilos, we really should look at the results of the next Olympic category up, the 96 kilo category, though they probably are, to be fair, a little bit heavier than most of the CrossFitters. Here, the average of the top 10 snatches is 171.5 kilos, about 9 kilos heavier than the men's 81 kilo category. On the women's side, the step up to the 76 kilo category is a more modest but still significant 4 kilos. At this point, I think it's fair and reasonable to point out that the CrossFit athletes had competed in multiple events before their 1RM snatch and would have been carrying a potentially significant amount of fatigue at this point. But how much difference does this actually make when you have to compare it to weightlifters who had to make weight and only had 3 attempts and were being judged much more harshly based on their technique? Well, interestingly, we can make this kind of comparison because the female winner of the CrossFit Games, Tia-Clair Toomey, who is an outstanding athlete, has competed in weightlifting. So we can make some kind of comparison here. Her best snatch in a weightlifting competition was 87 kilos, while she managed 91 kilos, 200 pounds, at the CrossFit Games. It's 4 kilos more, that's almost 10 pounds more. Now, we do have to bear in mind that her 87 kilo snatch was in 2018, and she will have become stronger since. But even with good progress, we would expect her to be somewhere in the low 90s. So it seems like her 91 kilo snatch was not far off her true 1RM. Some of the reasons for this are that in a weightlifting competition, you only get 3 attempts, and so you have to be a little bit more conservative with your attempt selection. If, however, the weight just kept climbing and you could take as many attempts as you wanted, as you could do in this CrossFit competition, weightlifters would almost certainly lift more. And in fact, this style of competition is something that has gotten weightlifting fans excited, talking about, discussing for a long time. What could some of these weightlifters hit if the bar just kept climbing? Another point that needs to be made is that anyone who knows weightlifting knows that the Olympics will not feature, at least this time around certainly, will not feature all of the best athletes. The qualification system limits participants per nation, which means that some of the top athletes have to stay at home. This year, for example, the Olympics was missing entirely athletes from North Korea because their nation just didn't choose to turn up. In fact, roughly half of the top 20 female weightlifters in the world were not at the Olympic Games. These factors especially affected the 64 kilo category, where the top 6 snatchers from the last World Championships were all not present in Tokyo at the Olympics. The average of the top 10 snatches at the World Championships was 5 kilos higher than at the Olympic Games. So if we look at a fairer comparison, the 2019 World Championships, where all of the best athletes were present, Guilherme Malheiros would have ranked 27th on the snatch in the men's 81 kilo category, assuming he could have dropped the 9 kilos, 20 pounds worth of body weight required. And that's based on his stated body weight of 90 kilos that we found. Tia-Clair Toomey would have ranked joint 25th in the women's 64 kilo category. And these are actually incredibly impressive placings for athletes for whom weightlifting is just a part of their training. They would have been lifting in the early morning C session, maybe D session, rather than with the world elite later in the evening on TV. A few other relevant points that I think we need to make here. All of these athletes, on the weightlifting and on the CrossFit side, are sensational. And to that point, however, all of these athletes, let's just start with the men's side, for example, were probably able to snatch, say, 100 kilos unbelievably quickly within a week or two of basically learning how to snatch. And so really the trainable improvements from, say, a 100 kilo snatch to 138 kilos from Guilherme Malheiros, rather than 100 kilos to 177 kilos like 77 kilo Lu Xiaojun did, or a 187 kilo snatch by a more comparative athlete, 85 kilo Andrei Rybakov, is just much less. 100 to 138 is about 44% of the improvement of 100 to 187. Or if we even start as low as 90 kilos as that trainable jump-off point, it's still less than 50% of the improvement. What WOD Science did is kind of like me saying that Usain Bolt is only 30% better than me because he runs a 9.58 and I run a 13.8. But I remember that my starting point when I was 11 years old was 15 seconds. So I've only improved 22% of the way to his 9.58. And I think we'll all agree that that's a much better way to put it. I've got 22% of the way to Usain Bolt's level, rather than saying that Usain Bolt is just 30% better than me. Now, the best CrossFitter in the world, perhaps all time, I know there's debate between Froning and Fraser, but he happens to also be a very good weightlifter, is Matt Fraser. He snatched 143 kilos in training, granted with as many attempts as he wanted and no weight cut, probably weighing around 190, 195 pounds. That's around 84, 85, 86 kilos. Andrei Rybakov snatched 187 kilos in competition, with 3 attempts weighing less than 85 kilos. If we take their trainable starting points, even way down to 80 kilos, which is not really fair because that's roughly where a lot of my friends started off. Like, it didn't take long to snatch 80, and that's where the build happened. For them, it probably was more like 100. But even if we go all the way to 80 kilos, Rybakov snatches 69.8% more than Matt, if we take that as the baseline from where they start. Stats are misleading. Weightlifters and CrossFitters are both awesome. The best CrossFitters make weightlifters like me look bad at my favorite thing, but likewise, our best weightlifters make the best CrossFitters look comically weak too. Don't hate on this video, but if you do, please leave that hate in the comment section so that the YouTube algorithm will boost the video. Much love.